I really like how Malphite plays. He's such a mess of simplicity and nuance that I can't help but just love playing him. I can't not love being a gremlin in lane and just poking someone and then smacking them down with a... Malphite was released September 2nd, 2009, and hasn't seen much change since. The latest visual update I've seen for him was in 2019, which focused mostly on his abilities and not his actual model and rig. Finding who voiced him was a bit of an adventure. It seems that it was a John Briggs with an H, not to be confused with the John Briggs with no H, that does voiceovers in the UK. Looking into this guy was one of the most mystifying experiences I've ever had because this man has zero online presence. Most of the sources I checked on him, like IMDb, say he only voiced Malphite and Gentleman Cho'Gath and has never done any VA jobs before that, or after. I also saw some stuff about a John Briggs from California who was a politician, but John Briggs is such a common name that it could just be a different guy. Considering Malphite is one of the oldest characters in League of Legends, there's not much floating around about him, but I'll get to his lore here, skip here if you don't care about this and it's just not your cup of tea. Malphite is again very old, so his lore is sparse along with most of his stories being rewritten and characterization being a bit off at some points. Before we talk about that, let's get into his biography. Malphite is a shard of a very old construct called the Monolith. Ixtal, which is the same place that Zillion is from if you've heard that before, fought back the rift with the Monolith. Every attack the Void threw at the city-sized golem would turn the stone into Malphite.
That's what I've been waiting for.
Until finally, it collapsed into the void, bringing an army's worth of Ixtal god warriors with him. But one shard of the monolith remained, slowly controlling the rocks around him to make a new form for itself so it could keep fighting the void. There was also a side story called Roots of a Poison Tree, but the dialogue for Malphite just didn't quite seem right with me. Remember, this is the same character that just says, going, or hurt, or something like that, right? This is his character. He's very short, to the point, and that's kind of the point. He's supposed to be blunt, like a rock. Just remember, Malphite is a decade and like a half old champion, right? He's a very old champion, and a lot of the sound files need to be very small so they could fit into the game at the time. So I get why he doesn't have a lot of voice lines. I get how they're kind of like short and simple. But I personally liked it because it's a part of his personality. He's a big rock man. He should be blunt and simple. But in the story, he seems to ramble on, man. He seems to act more like me than an actual rock man. It's just an odd departure from the I'm moving as fast as I can and the you will lose. Like now he's more of like a mystical spirit or some shit. And the disconnects don't just end there. Like just look at this rock's character model. Comparing his character model to a lore accurate like image of him just really shows the flaws in his design and how clunky he is in his age. And he really doesn't play like a rock guy you would. You'd think that he would play in a certain way, like very, very bold or like very clunky, very kind of like Ornn, right? But it turns out to be one of his most endearing qualities. He's so old and clunky that his gameplay is very simple and straightforward. First off, let's talk about his abilities. His passive Granite Shield gives him a barrier every 8 seconds without taking damage. And it just gives him a little shield on top of his normal HP, which is very nice for poking. Seismic Shard is a point-and-click ability that does a ton of damage, slows them, and steals their movement speed. So for instance, if you hit a minion with it, you'll not be as fast as if you hit like a Zeri with it. Thunderclap has a passive that gives you more armor with your passive up, giving you even more poke resistance and even more poke potential because you can go for dogshit trades and just poke them down. Its active empowers your first attack with a crit and has a Titanic Hydra effect after. And another thing it does is it gives you bonus damage equal to 15% of your armor value. Ground Slam is a circle around you that does a chunk of AP damage, reducing the attack speed of enemies around you. Did I also mention that they damage enemies around you? Unstoppable Force dashes Malphite to a position, knocking enemies up in a radius. And that's all of his abilities. You may have noticed that his abilities are kind of simple, except for the 10 commandments with the W. But you can kind of shrug that off. It's all fancy numbers to say he empowers his auto attacks. In short, his gameplay is very simplistic, and the only thing with a lot of nuance is his laning phase. Unlike most tanks, he starts off with a heavy AP ratio instead of a heavy HP ratio. So he spends most of his lane poking someone down, just playing safe, using his Q to poke and get away because he steals movement speed. And then when level 6 shows up, it's pretty important to not engage early because you don't have a lot of staying power in the early game. Since you put all of your eggs in the AP basket, a lot of your tankiness kind of suffers. And compared to a lot of these newer characters that are coming out with 200 years of game design, he's just not going to compare pre-level 6. But as long as you play more like a Cho'Gath or an ADC or a mage or something like that, and just keep poking at him and using your passive to keep yourself from taking too much damage, you'll eventually weather him down, and then you can do your funny business. And if you want to get those grasp of undying stacks, you're probably going to have to walk in there, clap some cheeks, and then run away before they clap yours. Because if you find yourself being dived, you just gotta clench your cheeks and... Bushes are a part of normal play, and they're a big part of it. The big problem you have here is that 2 of your abilities you cannot use unless you have vision, so try to stay in the bush or have a ward packed in if you ever have to go into bushes. And these are kind of general rules because there are so many places you can go with this. There are so many lanes you can go into with Malphite. You can actually probably go ADC with this if you wanted to and just go anywhere. I wouldn't recommend it. I've seen people who have done it in ranked, but I'm also not the best rank, so just take it with a grain of salt. But I will say that it works in top, jungle, mid, and support. And he's actually busted in support. Like, I'm gonna go on a side tangent here. He is busted. Because like, with a lot of ranked, a lot of people are just dumb and won't pre-pick their characters. So, a lot of time you end up being like, oh, we have no AP. Oh, we have no tank, or something like that. Well, now, you just pick Malphite. And then, if someone doesn't go AP, there you go, you're AP. If someone doesn't go tank, boom, you're tank. If someone doesn't go both, well, that game's already fucked anyway, because those guys can't play. But, after you're first back in the lane, there's a bit of a split. You can either go down the big, beefy, brawny man, or you can go into the assassin AP build. And believe it or not, you're going to play differently with these 2 builds. What a shock. It always depends on your team comp and what you need to build, but I would say that most of the time in top and support, you're going to go tank, and most of the time in jungle and mid, you're probably going to go AP. But Tank Malphite plays differently compared to characters like Ornn, Tahm Kench, or any of those bigger tanks, right? He's not that tanky because he put a lot of his base stats into AP. So he does excel in longer, prolonged fights where you're poking at each other and just keeping a neutral game. He excels in that. He can keep poking them. He can keep doing stuff. And if he ever finds himself in trouble, he can also ult away if it gets too bad. But if the situation's good, usually you can just kind of poke around, do a little bit of extra damage, and then once he finds an opening, he goes in with his ult and all ins. Just remember in these fights to take hits for your squishy backline. That is your job, and you can take poke a lot easier than they can. So just make sure to do that, and always make sure to watch out for someone else's engage. Not your team's, mind you. That's not their job unless they're ahead of you or a tank as well. I'm talking about enemy assassins or something trying to dive on your backline. You hit him where it hurts with that ult. Your ult's expendable, your team is not. Unless it's that 0 and 7 Ezreal over there, then just let him die. I mean, he's not doing much anyway. Now, if you're not going tank and you're going the AP assassin, you're going to play completely differently. You're going to play more like a LeBlanc or an assassin, right? You're going to be waiting for a dive, hiding in bushes, lurking out of vision, and waiting for the perfect time to strike. Kind of like an AD Scion. Your AP scaling as Malphite is just busted. He does amazingly well in terms of scaling, and you get to a point where you just one-shot anyone in the backline, which is your job now. Your job is to pick out someone in the backline and hit him where it hurts, preferably in the balls. And what to build for tank and AP is kind of subjective. It kind of is up to you. Most things would work. I would say Hearthsteel is not the greatest, so go with Frostfire Gauntlet if you're going to go tank. And if you're going to go AP, Night Harvester and Luden's Echo are just really good. There's also Everwinter or whatever it's called. That one's pretty good. I haven't had too much success with it, but to each their own. But something that connects both of these builds at a very fundamental level is don't miss your damn ult. Which If you do, because they flashed, they dashed, or you're just on brain lag, you're going to be balls deep in enemy territory and no one's getting you out of that one. But assuming you can hit your ult, you're also going to have to use your virgin-seeking missiles. So after a bit of poking, after a bit of goofing and gabbing, you see that guy? See that little goofball over there? He's just minding his own business, trying to do some League of Legends? Pfft, lame. Let's reward him with less League of Legends, then zoom away in the cloud of his remains. See this bloke? Another League of Legends player. Let's just go in there and there we go. How about this range top pussy? Just trying to make everyone's game fucking boring. Just trying to make the game boring for everyone. Well, let's just hit him with a this.
Why are you running?
And there he goes. You get my point. You can delete people with any build on this character. It's just, you're gonna have to be a lot more chillaxed with the tank build. In terms of runes, I'd say that you can kind of go anything. I would recommend Dark Harvest, First Strike, Arcane Comet, and Grasp. I would say that if you're going to go tank, Arcane Comet and Grasp are the best, and if you're going to go Assassin, all of them are good except for Grasp. Kind of just depends on what you want to do for the rest of the game. If you want a one-shot, if you want to poke, if you want scaling, it's all up to you. One of my personal favorite builds, if you've seen my first video on this channel, which don't watch it, it's dog shit. But you can tell I really like movement speed in this game. It's really funny to build. And one of my favorite builds is a Celerity, Magical Footwear, and Approach Velocity for maximum speed when you hit a Q. And a lot of the things I've been praising Malphite for, I have been on record as just being opposed to in the past. It was mostly a byproduct of characters like Viego being able to build Jack Show and just one-shot the entire lobby and just be impossible to kill because Jack Show at the start was just overpowered. And honestly, I don't even know the numbers at this point. It might still be overpowered at this point. To be fair, some people kind of like complain about Malphite and say he's overpowered, which he's just not. Like with the AP build, like he's less overpowered than 90% of the assassins, like Kayn, Kha'Zix, Rengar, LeBlanc, any of them. He's less overpowered, like, because he just can't run away. All these other characters can one-shot you, get out instantly. At least Malphite has to commit. Sometimes different build paths can just make a dull character like Malphite filled with possibility and fun. Well, I hope you enjoyed, and before you go, I have a friend that has a Twitch channel, and if you want to see more League of Legends and stuff, she's pretty fun. I'll put it in the description if you want to go check her out. She streams regularly, and you might actually see me on some of her streams. Usually I pop in for the League of Legends streams, and not much else because I'm not a Valorant player. But I really hope you guys enjoyed, and I really hope you guys have a great day.